fundamentals when conditions lie to you, and she broke the record again, not by inches but by margins that made the data analysts swear under their breath, and the colonel felt something unfamiliar crawl up his spine. Not fear, not anger, but the dawning awareness that he had been wrong out loud. And the third twist arrived quietly when Maya declined the applause, instead asking if anyone wanted to see why the numbers mattered, requesting permission to run a diagnostic overlay from her program, projecting shot groupings and micro-delays that revealed inefficiencies in the standard course design, showing how operators were losing time not because of skill but because of outdated layouts, and the SEALs leaned in now, professionals recognizing insight when it stared them down, and Harlan watched his authority transform from obstacle to opportunity as Maya offered solutions without condescension, explaining that her interest wasn't breaking records but understanding systems, that she had grown up watching her father teach kids who were told they didn't belong anywhere near firearms to respect the responsibility and the math of it, that she had studied engineering because numbers didn't laugh at you, and somewhere between graphs and target photos the colonel's posture changed, his arms uncrossing as he asked questions instead of issuing orders. And then came the fourth twist, the one that turned the day into legend, when a senior officer arrived unannounced, having been alerted by chatter about a civilian outperforming operators, and demanded a demonstration, skepticism heavy, and Maya ran the course one final time under full scrutiny, nerves humming, knowing this run would echo far beyond the range, and she delivered not her fastest time but her most precise, choosing consistency over spectacle, and the numbers held, unassailable, and the senior officer ordered a review not of Maya, but of the program, and by sunset a pilot project was approved, with Maya named as lead civilian consultant, a title that made the colonel swallow hard as he finally approached her, removed his cap and apologized. Not a grand speech, just a simple acknowledgement that he had laughed when he should have listened, and Maya accepted it with the grace of someone who had learned early that apologies don't erase moments but they can reshape the next ones. And as weeks passed the base changed in small ways, course designs updated, records recalibrated, whispers turning into open invitations for talent from unexpected places, and the colonel found himself telling the story differently each time, less about being proven wrong and more about being taught right, while Maya continued to break records, not just SEAL ones but internal benchmarks for efficiency and safety, proving that excellence isn't owned by a uniform or a rank but earned by discipline and curiosity. And the final twist, the one that sealed the legend, came months later when a young recruit, nervous, overlooked, asked the colonel for extra range time and he didn't laugh. He smiled and handed over the timer, because once you've watched assumptions shatter under the weight of truth, you learn that the quietest requests sometimes carry the loudest revolutions, and if the story moved you, if you believe the future belongs to those who earn it shot by shot, subscribe now and stand with the stories that remind America that greatness doesn't ask permission. It just shows up. Your video or narration. He laughed when she asked for 5 minutes on the range. Laughed because she was young, because she was black, because she didn't wear a uniform. And before this story ends, that same colonel will be standing at attention, silent, as she shatters records Navy SEALs swore could never be broken. If you believe talent deserves respect no matter where it comes from, hit subscribe right now, because stories like this don't get told unless you help tell them. The colonel laughed at a black girl's request to use the shooting range. She broke every SEAL record begins on a wind-scoured military base tucked between desert hills where the air smells like dust and hot steel. A place where reputations are made in silence and broken by numbers on a digital clock. And on that morning the Colonel Robert Harlan, 40 years in uniform, chest heavy with ribbons, voice like gravel, stood with his arms crossed watching a group of operators cycle through drills when he noticed her standing just beyond the painted safety line. Slim, calm, eyes steady, wearing plain jeans and a gray hoodie, no rank, no badge, no entitlement, just patience. And when she finally stepped forward and asked, politely, if she could use the range for a few minutes after they were done, the colonel laughed. Not a cruel laugh he would later insist, but the reflexive kind born from habit and hierarchy. The laugh of a man who had spent decades believing excellence had a specific look, sound, and pedigree, and the range went quiet in that way it does when tension sharpens the air. Some of the SEALs smirking, others curious, because something about the way she stood, feet planted, shoulders relaxed, didn't match the stereotype their laughter expected, and she didn't flinch when he laughed, didn't raise her voice or argue. She just said her name was Maya Brooks and that she had trained on civilian ranges since she was 12 with her father, a former competitive Shooter who had taught her that the weapon was only as loud as your mistakes. That accuracy lived in breath and patience, not ego, and Harlan waved her off at first, telling her this wasn't a public playground, that records here belonged to men who had earned them in blood and sweat. And that was when the first twist slipped quietly into the story, because instead of leaving, Maya reached into her pocket and handed him a folded piece of paper, a signed authorization from a visiting defense contractor who had invited her as a data consultant for a new targeting analytics program, a detail Harlan had skimmed past in his morning brief, and the laughter thinned into an uncomfortable chuckle as he realized she had every right to be there. Still, he tried to end it by offering her a token lane after the operators finished, thinking the range would humble her, but humility was a language Maya spoke fluently, and when the range cleared, she stepped up without ceremony, selected a standard issue rifle she had never fired before, checked it with ritual care, and asked only for a timer and the same course the SEALs had just run, murmurs rippling because that course was brutal. Multiple distances, timed reloads, stress positions, penalties for misses that stacked mercilessly. And Harlan agreed, half curious now, half defensive, and the timer beeped, and what followed rewrote assumptions in real time as Maya moved like water finding its level. No wasted motion, breathing slow even as the clock screamed urgency, her shots landing with a cadence that sounded wrong to men used to chaos, because there was no panic in it, just inevitability, and when the final target fell, the timer stopped at a number that made a petty officer blink. Then blink again, because it wasn't just good, it was impossible, shaving seconds off a record that had stood for 8 years, and Harlan cleared his throat and said it must be a fluke. Equipment variance, adrenaline, beginner's luck, and here came the second twist, because Maya nodded and asked to run it again with a different weapon. Any weapon he chose, and the colonel, pride stung, handed her a heavier rifle with a different optic, whispering to an aide that the first run wouldn't repeat. But the second run was cleaner, faster, her score improving in places veterans struggled, and the range fell into that deep silence where disbelief becomes respect, and still Harlan wasn't ready to yield, ordering a third run with added penalties, cold barrel, reduced light, because if the story ended there it would be too simple, and Maya agreed, adjusting her stance as the lights dimmed, her father's voice echoing in memory about trusting.